What's up, people? It's your boy JTG 903 here with another episode of the Meet Me podcast. My guest today, if you just want to go ahead and introduce yourself, your name, a little bit hobbies, just things about you. And
Yeah, of course. So my name's Jade. I'm originally from South Carolina. Just recently, I guess 3 years ago, moved to Texas and been here ever since. Started out in camp ministry and now currently going to school to be a marriage and family therapist and work at Chick-fil-A. So,
Chick-fil-A,
yeah,
okay, which Chick-fil-A at? Because I'd be going to Chick-fil-A, so
yeah.
I'm trying to.
Yeah, so I worked down at the Chick-fil-A in Jacksonville. I took that job mainly to just work with my schedule a little bit so I can counsel people and have a full-time job at the same time.
Yeah. All right, so we're in Tyler right now, and you said Jacksonville. So, like, do you live in the Jacksonville area, or?
No, so I live in Tyler,
Okay.
and I just drive down to Jacksonville. It's not too bad of a drive. It's only like 30 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I drive probably close to like 40 minutes for work, so I can understand a drive back and forth. What do you do with your drive time? Like, is that a time you use to like worship or get into the word or listen to podcast or?
Yeah, man, that's a good question. Typically, I just listen to a lot of music, a lot
Okay.
of worship music. Uh, I started doing this thing called a daily worship devotional, created by Shane and Shane. Really cool thing. Basically, it's they go over scripture like a psalms, and then you sing it back, kind of as an act of worship. It's just to kind of set your mind right for the day.
That's awesome, man. That's a great thing to do. Just like start your day off, just like with worship, and just
Yeah,
also
man.
devotional. That's pretty cool, man. So, how'd you like get to working at Chick-fil-A? Was that just kind of like something that just got dropped into your lap, or?
Yeah, that's a. So I had some history with Chick Fil A. So I started out, like I said, originally from South Carolina. When I graduated college, I did a little bit of outdoor leadership psychology. Took a job down in Charleston as a personal trainer. So I was a personal trainer during COVID, but that didn't really work out because a lot of people weren't going to the
Oh
gym,
man,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Because of the mask mandates and stuff. So had to provide for my family and ended up taking a job at Chick-fil-A, worked my way up there, and then got involved in the park system there and ended up leaving that job at the park system. Started my process in the camp ministry, went and worked at a camp called Sky Ranch here in Texas and as an outdoor educator.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. So, what exactly brought you to Texas? So it was the ministry.
Yeah, that job brought me to Texas. I took a hard look at my life
Yeah.
and wanted to do something in ministry. I've always kind of felt led towards camp ministry and wanted to be a part of that. Have some great friends from that ministry. Still talk to a lot of them
That's
today.
awesome.
Um, and I got to use some of my passions. So I started a local business called Faithful Adventures and wrote a book on that, talking about team building, how to build a culture of, great a great team.
So you wrote the book on it?
Yeah, man.
Oh
So
man, tell me
it's
what
pretty
that's
cool.
like.
So the book's called Cultivate Play. Highly, um, basically cultivate play. How to make highly effective teams, basically.
Hmm.
Um, where play meets purpose. And so basically, it's a book on team building that uses garden metaphors to kind of talk about how to develop a team. So,
That's
in
awesome.
gardening, it talks about watering, it talks about, giving the plants nutrients, giving it sunlight, giving it air to breathe, those types of things. And, a lot of times our leadership, for a team is supposed to do those things. It's supposed to communicate well. It's supposed to wire the team well, encourage them. So
That's
yeah.
really cool, man. So was that like something that got brought to you as like an inspiration? Like I need to write a book or.
Yeah. So went to a conference one time, and a guy said it was a thought leader, and he kind of inspired me. Hey, you need to write a book, be a subject matter expert, and so I kind of took the principles of gardening and thought about leadership, thought about communication, teamwork, how that all interplays, and was a president of a garden club back in my college, and kind of saw where that all fit.
Gardening. I would not take you for like a gardener. Like I don't know if I would.
Yeah, man.
That's pretty
In
impressive.
my I guess previous years, I enjoyed gardening. I love the act of it. I think with gardening, it's about patience. It's about seeing your hard work come into fruition and kind of see that harvest.
Yeah, I heard gardening can be very like difficult too. Like when you first start.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
very difficult process. So when we first got started at the university that I attended, we started that garden from bare minimum. Literally just had a field, and we started out with some raised boxes. Ended up being able to donate a lot of that food and that produce to a local food bank in town. So it was really cool.
That's awesome. Well, my family, some of them they're into like gardening. They got greenhouses they done built up and stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm no expert at all. I'm not even gonna act like I know about gardening.
Yeah.
It's just what I've heard. But I kind of want to go into. 'Cause you said you're from South Carolina originally.
Mm-hmm.
So growing up in South Carolina, I've never been to South Carolina. I've just been
Yeah.
in Texas my whole life. Kind of what was the area and like life like that like just growing up in a different part in another state.
Yeah, man. South Carolina is a crazy experience. So, in Texas, you have to drive, 8, 10 hours to get to the other side of the state. Whereas South Carolina, man, you can be at the bottom of the state in 3 hours. So, kind of how South Carolina is positioned, it's kind of in this big triangle from the upstate to the coast,
Okay.
basically. And so I lived in the upstate, which is the Greenville Spartanburg area. It's a really popular place right now. A lot of people are moving there, businesses are moving there. It's a really growing um, area just because of all the jobs and all the position that South Carolina is in. Because South Carolina is 3 hours away from Atlanta, Georgia. You got 4.5, 5 hours away from the Great Smokies,
Oh,
Tennessee, and
yes.
then you got the 3 or 4 hours, and you're at the East Coast beaches, which is something I think is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Sunrises on the East Coast, at the oceans,
Yeah,
something.
that whole area. So my sister has a boyfriend and he travels for work a lot and they go to North Carolina a
Mm-hmm.
lot and he's always talking about like how it's right there on the beach and
Mm-hmm.
my family actually just went to Tennessee to see like the old Smokies and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. So that's pretty cool that you mentioned that. And
Yeah,
it's
man.
just what's like the weather like over there? Because in Texas it's just like just whatever
Yeah.
happens.
So in South Carolina, you have 4 seasons. You're definitely going to experience, the snow, the rain, the heat, and it's humid there too. But I mean, it's pretty much a lot like East Texas. It's pretty sunny most of the time.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. Do you like? Is there anything about South Carolina like weather that you miss, or is it just since you say it's the same as Texas? You mentioned like snow. Like we don't really get snow like
yeah.
that. So is that something like that you're like a big fan of? Is like snow, and you're just like, man, I love the cold seasons and
Yeah,
stuff.
I mean, the snow is not really something I miss. It's really cool to be able to experience it, to be able to see. My family experienced a big snowstorm this past year, and so it's cool seeing their pictures, um, and kind of seeing them interact and play with the snow. But I mean, the thing that I miss really about South Carolina are the beaches, man.
Oh
There's
man.
there's just nothing like East Coast beaches, especially in small local towns where there's live music every night.
Yeah, so the only like really beaches I've been on is I've been out to like California
Hmm.
area, and then of course over here you got like Corpus Christi, Galveston.
Hmm.
Does that not really compare to like the beaches over on the East Coast?
Yeah, in my opinion, I've only been to one beach here in Texas, and that was Galveston. And in my experience, I think Galveston offers a little bit something different than South Carolina beaches, just in the sense that it has that amusement park kind of thing right there on the pier. But other than that, like, oh man, Charleston, if you're like a nature person, if you
Mm-hmm.
love, finding shark teeth, shelling, those times of things, uh, man, Charleston, those beaches down there in the low country are something, you could spend hours doing.
Yeah, seems like the whole area is really like a nature's person. Could you mention like the mountains over there and
Yeah,
stuff? And
so you know, it's pretty similar to Colorado in a sense. I mean, not that, South Carolina has the big 14Kers, that you can hike up. But as far as if you want to get outdoors, if you want to enjoy, nature, South Carolina has a lot to offer.
yeah, would you say you're like an outdoorsy type person? You like hiking and things like that, or?
Yeah, I mean, in my college days, that's what I did. I was an outdoor leadership major. I actually spent some time backpacking. I did a 14-day backpacking trip between Georgia and Tennessee. Hiked over 60 miles with a 40-pound rucksack on my back or
Man,
backpack.
God bless you, man.
Yeah.
So, where did you go to college at?
Yeah, so I went to a small Christian college called North Greenville University. Studied outdoor leadership and psychology there.
Okay. And then, did you have like a plan for that? You know, you said you always loved like camp ministry and stuff. So, was coming to Texas like always in your plans, or were you planning on just being in South Carolina, being a part of camp ministry, kind of staying out there, being an outdoorsy type person? And
No, man. So Texas was never really on my radar. It just kind of fell into my lap with just how my life was going at the time. Um, just some situations came up,
mm,
and I traveled out here to Texas for those reasons, and
okay.
ended up sticking around.
Okay, so do you have family in South Carolina still, or have they moved out of the
Yeah,
area?
so all
Or
my family lives in South Carolina. They all live in the upstate, pretty close to one another. I mean, I think the farthest distance between, you know, my family is like 20, 25 minutes.
okay, do you ever like go back and visit them, like just on occasion, or?
Yeah, not really, just because of the season of life that I'm in.
Yeah,
We go into school full time, working full time. I don't really have a lot of availability to see them, so I haven't actually been back to South Carolina in about a year and a half.
yeah. Do you have plans to one day go back and visit, or?
I don't know, man. So right now, I've just been trying to focus really on the Lord and kind of
Mhm.
following His direction. I don't know what the Lord has in store for me, but I do know that He's got me in this season of life in Texas for a reason.
I'm glad that you mentioned that. So let's kind of get into that. So your relationship with the Lord, it seems like that's something that's very near and dear to your heart. You know, you mentioned following Him. You don't really know what's in store. How did you like come to know Him? Like, what's your story? Like, I guess a testimonial you have for that.
Yeah, man. So growing up, life was difficult for me. I came from a home where my parents divorced when I was pretty early on in my childhood. I was 10 years old, and going on 11. And so that was really hard in my childhood and really trying to find out who I was during that time, trying to find my identity and friends and sports and everything else besides the Lord. And so it came to a pivotal moment in my life when I decided, hey, you know, is God really who He says He is? I went to vacation Bible school as a child. Um, but I really didn't really accept my faith until I was in middle school. I was at a Christian camp. I guess that's the tie-in back to wanting to be a part of camp ministry is just I had that experience at camp. But yeah, I gave my life to Christ at a camp called the Wanata Valley up in well, I guess it's considered Travelers Rest, South Carolina. It's up there in Cleveland. But yeah, it was a really cool camp. One of the coolest experiences there was doing these Hummer rides up a mountain and kind of going up, and there was this cross that you could see, and it was really cool. Um, and so I've always teetered with my faith just because of just growing up in a situation like that. It was really hard. Um, and so I grew up middle school, still trying to figure out my identity, just those forming years, right? Of not really having any people in my life besides my grandparents. My grandparents were a huge impact in my life, but experiencing um, Christianity didn't come natural. Like I didn't grow up going to church. Like I spent a lot of my time at church by myself. So I had to make my faith my own. I didn't have anyone else's faith to go off on.
Okay, yeah. I kind of had like the opposite effect. I would say like I kind of resonate with your story up until that like very last comment. Because for me, middle school years, once again, having parents that divorced very early on and just kind of going through, especially you talk about like middle school years, like those
Mm-hmm.
are the years where identity really like hits you because
Mm-hmm.
like everyone wants to be cool, they want to fit in, they want to have what everybody else
Yeah.
has, and that can be very rough. And I appreciate you like having the courage to share that. But for me, like I was going to church to hang out with my friends. I wasn't really
Mm-hmm.
kind of there by myself. I wouldn't even say I was there for Jesus. I did the whole like raise my hand thing and definitely had a seed planted, but it wasn't until like in my early adult life that I actually like started having a relationship with
Yeah,
Jesus.
man.
So I guess I had salvation at a younger age, but then like the relationship didn't come till later on. Was it like that for you, or did you just kind of like jump right into a relationship since you said you had to kind of navigate it on your own?
Yeah, man. So everyone's got a story, and thanks for sharing your story, brother.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it was just like I had to rely on something other than myself, right? Because myself, I wasn't getting anywhere. And a lot of my life, I have relied on myself for a lot. When you grow up in a situation like that, you have this very survival mentality. So, I'm not a very, to this day, I'm working on it, but I'm still not a very emotional person because I'm driven by logic. I'm driven by what keeps me safe, right? And so there were times when I did a lot of dumb things in my growing up years just because I wanted to fit in, kind of like what you said. So I definitely had that mentality of having, both, people, friends who I went to church with, and then I had my friends who, accepted me for who I was, as far as, my family's history and stuff. It's really, divorce in a church is very uh, taboo subject. Like a lot
Yeah.
of people don't like talking about it,
Yeah.
and it's a very, and rightfully so, right? Divorce
Hmm.
was never meant to be something that humans experience, but because of our sin and because of pride and selfishness, it's something that 50% of people statistically go through. But I found my identity in sports too, and that really shaped a lot of my middle school years. I was playing football for my middle school, and then I got to high school and ended up, wanting to try out for our high school football team, and got told I couldn't because I had some kind of heart murmur issue,
Mm.
and they weren't going to allow me to participate in physical contact sports without seeing a cardiologist. And that really wrecked my world for a little bit because, again, I was trying to find my identity in all the wrong places. And then, through that and through a lot of searching, I came really started building a better foundation of faith through that experience.
Through the heart condition,
Mm-hmm.
was it ever something that would cause you like a lot of worry and anxiety, like freak out?
No, I was actually, apparently, from what I've been told, when I was younger, I actually had to go to like some heart specialists and heart doctors, like at Duke, which is very um, highly, I guess, notable medical school
Okay.
um, when I was young. But really, nothing really came of it. I did a stress test, that year when I was going out to um, try out for football, and my results. I don't know if it was just because I was stubborn or hard headedness, but I mean I made it all the way to like the very end of the stress test. I think what gave way was just my legs being tired of running up an incline, but
Yeah.
they really said, "Hey, you're good to go." But by that time, tryouts had already passed, and
Oh
it's
man,
kind of how it
that's
goes.
how did you end up like taking that? Was that just like end of the world for you, or were you more like optimistic about it?
Well, it's kind of like the next stage mentality, right? And
Yeah.
so that survival mentality kicked in. And it was like, all right, well, football is out of the picture. What's next, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, I got to find friends somehow. And that's really where I started taking, trying to find, whoever, would accept me as a friend. And that's what led me to a lot of bad crowds and a lot of bad influences. But it's what shaped me today. So,
That is such a true statement. Like
mm-hmm.
such a great perspective. It's just like you mentioned, just feeling accepted and love, and just wanting to find friends. So you went off and searched for it
Mm-hmm.
in all the wrong places,
Yeah, man.
and just I think that that's definitely happened to me. I'm sure it's happened to a lot of people that are watching, where they whether they're doing it right now or they've done it in the past, and they look back at their friends and stuff. It's like they looked in the wrong places, and what I'm really trying to get to is like you said, you're in school to be a marriage counselor therapist.
Mm-hmm.
So what has you feeling this passion to like help like married couples?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. One of the reasons why that is because my parents got a divorce, and I believe in the marriage covenant. I believe what God has joined together. Scripture says, Matthew 19:6, that what God has joined together, let no man separate. And so I believe in the covenant of marriage. I believe that it's a lifelong commitment. I believe that the marriage was supposed to be fulfilled. That was supposed to be something that just wasn't given up on easily.
Yeah.
And I think in today's culture, with all the self care mantra or the
Mm,
self love mantra that social media puts out, it makes people really easy to give up on marriage, and especially in the different legal aspects of marriage too, right? So like you can go to a court system, especially here in Texas, and you can get divorced in 60 days.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah, it really doesn't take much, and there's
yeah,
so much that can like justify divorce.
yeah,
And even in the Bible, the Pharisees, it talks about they would try to like test Jesus, and that's one
mm,
of the way they tried to test him was like get him to slip up on the rule of divorce and like what justifies divorce. Because
yeah,
at the time there was a big like political scheme. You had like one teacher saying this, another teacher saying
mm,
this, and it was almost like they wanted him to pick a side. And he just referenced Genesis, and like you said, it's like what God has brought together, let no man
yeah,
separate. And it
mm-hmm,
talks about how a man will leave his father and mother, and the two will become one
yeah,
flesh. And but divorce, yeah, you mentioned it earlier, like 50%, even in the church,
mm-hmm,
you got Christians getting divorced, and it's just you talked about. I just love everything that you hit on it because it just kind of has my viewpoint too, where it's like you talk about like everyone just gives up easily,
yeah,
and when you think about love, well, the Bible represents love. For me, a big thing that stands out is for God so loved the world, He sent His only Son.
mm-hmm,
Like to have Jesus die on the cross to the point where He loves you,
mm-hmm,
knowing because Jesus knows your heart, knowing whether or not you would reject him doing that.
mm-hmm,
So he knew there was going to be people that, he's going to die for that still don't
yeah,
care and reject him. And, you know,
yeah,
that's just crazy though, because like I do believe we are in a world where it's about my feelings. Like it's
mm-hmm,
me, 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 me,
yeah,
me. Like my feelings triumph everything else.
mm-hmm,
And sometimes it requires sacrifice. It
mm-hmm,
requires that sacrificial like love
mm-hmm.
where a relationship takes two people.
Yeah,
It
for sure.
does, and it really does. And they say the first year of marriage is the hardest, and I think part of that is because now you're learning to put somebody else before yourself.
Yeah,
And in our human nature, that's just we're just not used to that. Like
yeah,
we're just naturally selfish.
mm-hmm,
So as far as so you mentioned like your parents getting divorced was like a big driving force.
mm-hmm.
And are there any like recommendations you can give somebody? Maybe somebody right now is like feeling like hey, like I would love to hear more from this guy. Like I just want to help my marriage. We're fighting all the time, and just is there any like book you can read? Which of course the Bible. That's what I
Yeah.
recommend top. But are there any like I guess self help is what you can call it that you could recommend for them?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big resources right now that a lot of people may or may not know is anything that researched by Gottman or this person named Sue Johnson. She does emotionally focused couples therapy, but there's a research method out there called Gottman's couples method. And so a lot of his studies show that there's four really reasons why people end up in divorce. And one of he calls it or refers it to the four horsemen. And the four horsemen, are defensiveness, contempt, criticism, and man, why did I just draw a blank?
Oh man.
Um, yeah. Anyways,
Hey, 3 out of 4 is not bad. That's what I'm
yeah.
saying. Hey, be a
Let me
good
think
reason
about that real
to
quick.
refresh and do it. So, what I can do is, so what was the name of that again? So
Yeah,
just
so
like
it's the Gottman method, the four horsemen. Um, oh yeah, it's criticism,
mm,
contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. That's
yeah,
I just drew a blank,
you just
but
stonewalled the last answer. You're just like, I
yeah,
don't want to give it, man. But
yeah, but so and the real kicker is the one that leads to most contempt, to most divorces is contempt, right? And so
yes,
it's the ability or the act of a spouse being sarcastic or putting the other one down and like just dogging on them, right? And just having kind of lacking that respect, which goes back to very biblical, right? Ephesians 5 20 through 25. It talks about husbands loving their wives as Christ loved the church and he gave himself up for the church, right? And so the husband's supposed to do the same, right? He's supposed to die to himself. He's supposed to put um, his wife and supposed to care for her. But in the same regard, that doesn't let the woman off the hook either, right? Because
yeah.
the wife is supposed to respect her husband, right?
Yeah, a
Under
lot of people
the
like to
leadership.
keep it on that, and I love that you mentioned Ephesians 5 because that kind of goes into like a question I had. I didn't mean to
Yeah.
cut you off or anything, but it's like one thing that I see that's kind of like tiptoed around is like abuse, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, if the Bible tells us, you're supposed to stick together, like you're in unity, so how would that play into like an abusive relationship? How would
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a hard topic,
that?
right?
Yeah.
Very much, very much. A lot of that comes down to your beliefs and where you stand individually. I think the one thing that I would always recommend is, protecting yourself, especially if you're in a situation where, imminent danger is present, right? Like
Yeah.
if there's a possibility that your life or your kids' lives are being threatened, then obviously that's not a safe environment. So you need to get out of it, right?
Yeah.
But it also, says in the word too. I mean, you can justify everything in the word, right?
Yeah.
I think it's in First Corinthians where it talks about, if a husband or a wife, separates from their spouse, they're supposed to remain single or be reconciled, right? And so I think that's one of those reasons or one of those moments in Scripture where it's very biblical to separate, especially if you're in a situation where you are literally in danger, like your life's at stake. Um,
Yeah, I'm a big like fan. Like yes, like if you are in danger, get out.
yeah,
Like I don't think, especially like I don't think the Lord would want you getting abused just
yeah,
constantly. And
for
then
sure.
it talks about how He loves the children. So like I love that He mentioned like if the children are in danger, like yeah, get out. But I think it's in First Peter it references where it talks about living like a life. I'm just kind of like paraphrasing,
Mm-hmm.
but the moral of his statement was pretty much like showing your spouse what the Christian like walk is and like
Mm-hmm.
praying for them and just kind of like being an example of
Mm-hmm.
how they should be and just pray that the Lord changes their heart and they change as a person. And
Yeah.
you can definitely do that through separation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't justify what's good, what's bad. I just like you said, just follow
Yeah.
the Bible. But I would say I'm from a divorced marriage, and I don't really feel this like conviction of it.
Mm-hmm.
I still pray for my ex-wife
Mm-hmm.
all the time, and right now I am single. I don't have any plans of getting in another relationship. That doesn't mean that's not the goal in the future. I've been
Mm-hmm.
in past relationships even after divorcing from her, but I've noticed like I got some work I got to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna work on myself because I realized I can't love a spouse if I can't love myself. Like I can't be a good husband if I can't be a good son of God.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm at, and that's what I would push out to anybody else out there is
Yeah.
look at yourself first. Like, what do you need to work on? We can point our fingers at everyone else all day long, but it says, why worry about the speck in your brother's eye when you got a log in your
Yeah,
own? And it's like,
for sure.
yeah, so just having that's really brought like a lot of peace and closure to the point where I'm really just content in just being single.
Yeah.
Even Paul writes, I think it is First Corinthians, where he's like, hey, I would rather you be as I am, which is like single and
Hmm.
thriving in that. And if you really read the Bible, there's stuff about marriage in here, but most
Hmm.
of it is really about a relationship with God
Hmm.
and just salvation and who Jesus is and what that looks like. And you know, I would say as the cornerstone foundation of faith, if you are a person of
Hmm.
faith and your relationship with Jesus is not monitoring, what it should
Hmm.
for the Bible, I would just start there
Yeah.
and not even worry about a wife or girlfriend or relationships or friendships or
Yeah.
whatever you got going on.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to now kind of divert into like the camp ministry part because I'm really interested in that because I
Yeah.
went to Sky Ranch as a kid. I
Hmm.
loved it. I love doing the
Yeah.
blob where they just like send you up in the air.
Yeah.
Like that's cool.
Yeah.
What is it about like the camp life that like just really get you going? Is it just the outdoors? Is it the kids? Like
Yeah,
what?
man. Man, it's the ministry aspect of it, right? At Sky Ranch, I got to teach fifth grade education, so a lot of the programs would come in from the Dallas area, and they would send
Yeah,
their elementary schools out to our camp. And yeah, we were supposed to share the gospel, or we weren't really supposed to share the gospel with them, right?
yeah,
But we showed them the gospel through how we cared for them and loved on them and provide activities for them that they wouldn't get elsewhere. And so through that experience, a lot of fifth grade education, we get to do a lot of activities that kids normally could not afford. If because our Sky Ranch, it's a ministry and it takes a lot to run a ministry. It's as much as it is a ministry, it's also a business too, right?
yeah,
But I would say, that business and that ministry aspect doesn't change, right?
yeah,
The business aspect is for it to still share the gospel. But in order to
mm,
share the gospel, it's like any church, right? It's got to keep its
yeah,
doors open. It's got to
yeah,
keep the camp open and functioning. But yeah, through that experience, just being able to, I send kids down the zip line for the first time, get to, show them how to shoot a bow and arrow for the first time,
sounds like
getting them
fun.
out on the water, canoeing for the first time. Those things are, those first experiences, right? Having a kid catch a fish for the first time. Like we're talking about kids who are in Dallas who have never like even been like in front of a lake hardly, right?
Wow.
And so just getting those cool experiences.
That's really cool that you
Yeah.
can provide that because I did a mentoring alliance
Hmm.
here in East Texas for a little bit, and just seeing the joy on like a kid's face,
Hmm.
it just warmed my heart so much, and just
Hmm.
like I see why Jesus talks about like loving like the little ones, and
Yeah.
just like how it'd be better to tie a millstone around your neck than to like
Yeah.
lead them astray, and like that's a heavy burden to be put in charge of children.
Yeah.
So as a leader, and you said like you wrote a book on like
Hmm.
team building and stuff like that. Maybe like timeout. They're playing volleyball up here,
Hmm.
so like that's what all the commotion and noise is about. But
Yeah.
it'll go away here in a second. They just had them locked out. They opened the doors. Just they're like, what is all that commotion going on?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're up at the church right now, and they do volleyball every single Sunday. It's
Oh,
just kind
nice.
of like it's our college and young adult program. It's called Unite, and I've met a lot of cool people through that. But
That's
to
cool,
get back
man.
to what I was saying, because like leading like children, for me personally, especially looking back on my life, at that time, I would not have put myself as a leader in front of my children,
Hmm.
just with the lifestyle I was living.
Hmm.
And so, how do you like carry that weight of like being in charge of like the next generation
Yeah, man.
and just like having that weigh in on you?
Yeah, I mean, God calls us to be responsible for our words and our actions, right? He says there is life in you know or death in the tongue,
Yeah,
right?
life and
Yeah.
death and the power of the tongue, and
Yeah,
like your
so
words
life
have.
and death and power of the tongue. Yeah, so thinking about that, making sure that anything that's coming out of your mouth is wholesome, and uplifting and encouraging. A lot of times with these kids, I also did what's called student development, which is teaching a bunch of character skills to these children through games and activities, whether that be what it looks like to be a leader, what it looks like to communicate well, what it looks like to be a part of a team. And a lot of those things, dude, like I still struggle with, because again, back to that human nature, we're selfish, right?
Yeah.
We want the attention on us. We want to make a name for ourselves. But ultimately, man, at the end of the day, like all that stuff is just meaningless.
Yeah.
Really, when it comes down to it, man, if you're not glorifying the Lord, and that doesn't matter what you're doing, what your occupation is. You can be, a minister, you can be a nurse, you can be a teacher, you can be a therapist, you can be a blue collar worker, a construction worker. Anytime that you get to reflect the love of Jesus to others is, that's your calling.
Yeah, I love when people tell me like, "Oh, I want to go into ministry." I'm like, "Okay, I know what you mean, but really, like, your
Mm-hmm.
life is ministry."
Mm-hmm.
Like that, they talk about the Great Commission in Matthew 28, where it's like you just go and make disciples of all nations.
Yeah.
So it's like wherever you work, like that's a form of ministry, and like your friendships, that's a form of ministry, and like your church is
Mm-hmm.
a form of ministry, and so you can really minister anywhere. Like this right here could be a ministry. Like if you were not a
Mm-hmm.
Christian, I was having a conversation with you, I could share the gospel and like
Yeah.
lead you to Christ through that. So
Yeah.
just look at everything. Yeah, you hear me spitting bars? Yeah, I know. Anyway, so uh but as far as like the kids go, so what? So I know what Sky Ranch is. So maybe like somebody else doesn't know. Do you mind talking more about like Sky Ranch and what types of kids are like coming to these camps? Is it like a certain niche of children, or they from all over the area? And
Yeah, man, the beautiful thing about Sky Ranch is it's really similar to what people would refer in Tyler as Pine Cove. But Sky Ranch is a multi site camp. It offers, camp at in the van location. So it
mm,
offers a day, week long camp in the van area, but it also offers day camps for those in Dallas. Um, and then it also offers, other camps as well, as in Oklahoma and Colorado. Those are kind of the leadership and the family tracks of camp. But, for our van location, typically, the cool thing about Sky Ranch is yes, it's inexpensive. It's a week long experience, but the kids are getting to hear the gospel every single day, and they recruit college kids from all over the. I call them kids because I'm a lot older now, but I guess they're more young adults. But they recruit college students all over the Texas who are in love with Jesus, and man, they have a very um, long recruiting process to make
yeah,
sure that the students they're bringing in are vetted, who love Jesus, who are invested in the lives of their students, right? And so there's no really exclusion. Like every you know person who or every child is included at camp, and if they can't afford it, Sky Ranch offers scholarships for that.
yes.
Um,
You mentioned like they have a long recruiting process. I was going to ask that. So if there's a young adult out there that would be interested in something like that, like where can they go to like apply for that?
Yeah, so typically they can go to skyranch.org. That's going to be the best way. And then obviously, how I found Sky Ranch is through this camping conference organization called CCCA. It's like the 3CA. But it's like it recruits, people from all over the United States to go to these camps and work and serve the Lord for a summer.
Okay. So you said you know quite a bit of people at Sky Ranch. Now, were you ever involved in like the recruiting process to like get kids to come be counselors or anything like
No, I never got involved in that. I just primarily worked in the school programs
that?
area.
Okay.
My specialty was just changing the lives and during the school year. So our season ran from August to May.
Okay. How do they do like let's say you are a counselor, like what does life look like there? Would the van area only really get people in Texas, or may they like? Because you mentioned like Oklahoma, South Carolina, would they maybe like ask you if
Yeah,
you could
so
go to another state or?
it kind of depends on what you want, right?
Okay.
It's kind of like your choice wherever you kind of want to plug in and fill in. But a lot of help is needed in the van location because that's our biggest program. Typically, how the Sky Ranch program works is they operate under a life map. And so the life map is you bring campers in, people fall in love with camp, they fall in love with the experience, they fall in love with Jesus, they want to stick around Sky Ranch. And so they'll come back when they're in college and they'll work during their college years. And then a lot of them will even apply to be a fellow. And so the fellowship is a really cool process where you get to work at camp for a whole year. You're full time on staff. You get poured into while you're there. Um, you get to live in community with other men and women. Obviously, you have men housing, women housing, but you get to live in these community groups and you just get to serve the Lord. And that could be like serving, on the maintenance crew. You can be working activities during the weekends, and through that, you're being fed spiritually as well.
That's awesome. About how many kids are coming through each, like, because I'm sure it's like all summer,
Mm-hmm.
you said, and then you mentioned all year. So like, I guess I got like a two part. So one is like, what's the average amount of like students coming in, and then like counselors, but then also, what are y'all doing when like it's not summertime and like kids are in school and they're not really coming to camp like
Yeah,
that?
and so during the summer, we typically run close to um, 800 to 900 students a week. It kind of varies depending on the peak weeks and the not peak weeks. It kind of just depends on, school ending, school starting back kind of thing. But, so that's kind of the typical number. Um, each cabin has like 3 or 4 counselors and about, 10 to 15, maybe possibly 20 students, 20 children. There's a good child to student or child to counselor ratio there. But during the season, during the off season, so the off season would be our retreat season and my season, the school program season. So typically every week we have schools that would come out on field trips, and whether that be a 3-day program, Monday through Wednesday or Wednesday through Friday, and you would sign up. I mean, their school systems would sign up for either outdoor education or they would sign up for student development.
So there's really something to do there like all year round. Like
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
so I mentioned like the blob earlier. So what all activities do they have? Because I'm sure like when it's in the winter seasons, you don't want to get on that cold lake. I mean, some kids might be like daredevils like that, but
Yeah.
I'm certainly not. So
Yeah, so during the I guess the kind of the spring season or when summer's not in session, they still have during the retreat season, during the warmer months, they offer the blob and water activities such as canoes, the water trikes, those types of things. But really, they have paintball, or they used to have paintball. I don't really know if they do paintball
that'd be
anymore.
fun.
But they offer skeet shooting, for men's retreats and stuff like that. They offer zip lining, of course. They offer this thing
Yeah.
called Treetop Towers, which is a really cool experience. They have this big blob. They have the activity center, which if you've ever heard Dude Perfect actually
Yeah.
shot a video at Sky Ranch, and that's one of the I guess the claim to fame of Sky Ranch is that Dude Perfect, their video kind of went viral after they shot that video at Sky Ranch.
Yeah,
That's kind of
yeah,
what
because
they.
they're from like the Dallas Fort Worth
Mm-hmm.
area, which is
Mm-hmm.
not far
And
from
yeah,
there,
they have a pretty
honestly.
big partnership with them today. Like they host a big fundraiser night. Sky Ranch does called Cowboys and Cowboys, and typically Dude Perfect and a lot of the famous cowboys. People who ride the horses, and then even the NFL football team will come out and they raise a lot of money for kids to go to
Oh,
camp.
that's awesome, bro.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I remember it was all about Gaga Ball at camp. Like
Yeah.
you know how you take the picture the
Mm-hmm.
morning of? We'd have to like go down there wearing different shirts because we're playing a
Mm-hmm.
game of Gaga Ball and we're putting it all out there. And then we
Yeah.
put our shirt on afterwards so it ain't all
Yeah.
dirty and stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if they had Gaga Ball, I might just pull up for that. Like I might
Yeah,
just have
man.
to.
Yeah, so Gaga Ball is in most of our. So we have them sectioned off by zones. It's kind of like what makes camp safe. We make sure that the students who are on our property, the children who are on our property, they're always guided by an adult. We have this rule of three where no child can be in a group less than three, just because of safety reasons,
Yeah.
especially in today's culture and
Yes.
society.
Yes.
But yeah, Gaga Ball is in almost every zone but one. So
Dang, I do not want to go to that zone. They need to. They
well,
need to
that's the cool thing because that zone is Treetop Towers, which isn't always operational, especially during the school year, but especially on the weekends and during the summer months, it's always in operation. But that's like your rock climbing walls,
Oh, okay.
your your tree house kind of atmosphere.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be
Yeah,
cool. So, yeah. Man, I really appreciate you taking time to talk to me. I guess in closing, what we can do, I really didn't mean to talk about Sky Ranch that much, but
yeah,
it's just like I was very interested in that. That's pretty cool.
yeah.
You said you work at Chick-fil-A, so of course, like I'm gonna ask a kind of like a just a funny question. Do you have
Yeah.
like any like Chick-fil-A stories? Like, has there just been any like crazy day, just customer, just
Yeah, man. I think the beauty of Chick Fil A is that kind of underneath Chick Fil A is this faith aspect to it. Not that everyone who works at Chick Fil A is faith oriented or has a faith background, but Chick Fil A is one of the very few restaurants that is closed on Sundays. Um, and I think what's really cool about that is that even though we don't explicitly shout the name, Jesus or anything like that. People refer to it as the Lord's Chicken, right?
yes, yes.
And what's cool about Chick Fil A is just the people you get to meet, man, and just the atmosphere of it. And Truett Cathy kind of set a standard, and that's the one thing with business and in life in general, man. You want to have priorities, and if your priorities are right, um, whatever you do, things will go well, right?
Yes.
You know, first and foremost, with their business, they care more about the people than, making the money. They always want to go the second mile to serve the guest. And so, yeah, I mean, that's the cool thing about working for a place like that is that, you know, it allows you to just be the hands and feet of people, you
That's
know.
awesome, man. Have you ever led anybody to faith at Chick Fil A? Like, it's just been.
Yeah, I've never had one of those experiences, but I have been able to encourage people and just pray with people while at Chick Fil A, which is really cool. Both customers um, and uh, and people who actually work on staff. Actually, the coolest thing is like when I was back in Charleston, back in South Carolina, where I was working. I actually got to build a pretty strong relationship with this guy who had experienced a lot of trouble in his life, and got to give him a couple rides home. And man, just being there for someone when they're in a desperate time of need, man, is just awesome. Jesus talks about that, right? He says, "Care for the least of these,
Yeah,
care for those who are struggling, care for those who are burdened." Right? You know, um, it says, "Bear one another's burdens." Right?
yeah. And it
Um,
kind of ties back into what we were talking about earlier, like being like sacrificial. You know, it
yeah,
always says like the last will be first and the first will be last. And when the
mhm,
disciples are arguing like over who's the greatest,
yeah,
and he basically just says like, whoever puts himself last and just like
mhm,
serves everyone else. And I've kind of noticed like at Chick Fil A, that's a very big aspect of y'all. Is
mhm,
just kind of a lot of people talk about like the my pleasure stuff,
mhm,
but you've seen the funny videos where they'll be chasing the car down, and
mhm,
it's just like, but that's very much like the Christian spirit. It's just like putting everyone else like first and just serving. And I'm sure on some of those rides there may have been a day where you had a long shift and you're just like, I'm just ready to be home, but you're
yeah,
just being there for somebody else. And so
yeah,
that's just great to hear, man. It just seems like you really have a heart for others and you care, like
yeah,
especially kids. And so like I pray the Lord blesses you and like
yeah,
you get everything you need in life. It seems like you have your passions down. You seem like you're very much full of wisdom. I definitely learned something from this
yeah,
podcast. You know, this is the reason why I do it is I know it could help somebody else out there, but it
Mm,
definitely helps me because when I'm going back and listening, it's just like little nuggets of wisdom I pick
yeah,
up. Because in the moment, I'm focusing on like what question I'm gonna ask, like
yeah,
where we're gonna guide the conversation. So when I go back and just listen to it, the
yeah,
Lord like really works in my life and just like tells me like wisdom that I need to hear. And I just
yeah,
pray that He does that for somebody else, and maybe
yeah,
He'll do that for you. Maybe you'll go and listen to it and get something. So I really
yeah, man.
appreciate it. Maybe we'll be doing this again in the future. I
Yeah,
don't know. It seems like we could have a lot more to talk about. Maybe we could do like a check in,
yeah,
see how your schooling goes and stuff. But
yeah, man.
yeah, man, I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
What's
man.
up?
Of
If
course.
there's anything else you need to tell the people or
Yeah, man.
anything, just go ahead. If not, we'll just go ahead and cut it out right here, and we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, man. I would love to close with this thought. 2 Corinthians 5:18 talks about being reconciled to Christ, right? And so, because we've been reconciled to Christ, we have the ministry of reconciliation. So, you know, kind of what we talked about earlier, whether you have a marriage, a friendship, a relationship with a parent, or a sibling, or even a friend that has gone awry. Never lose hope in that relationship. Always, um, when able, try to reconcile that, because Jesus talks about forgiveness, and forgiveness is so important. He says in His Word that um, if you're not willing to forgive, how much more am I not willing to forgive you? Right? I mean, I think Jesus explicitly says that when He's talking to Peter about how many times should I forgive, and he goes, you should forgive 70 times 7, right? And so we should be a people of forgiveness. We should be a people of reconciliation, and that's kind of the reason why I've gone into the field that I'm going into, is because I believe I'm a ministry of reconciliation. I feel like that's a passion and a calling. Um, you know, that's it.
Man, that's so awesome. That's
Yeah,
what I'm talking about right there. Like
yeah,
just walking it right out. Everything
mm-hmm.
I just said. And that's great, man. I
Mm-hmm.
really appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Well, y'all take care. I'll see you on the next one.